Hello, everybody. On this very hot Independence Day, I'm in my studio in very hot South Carolina. I hope you're in a cool place. I'm here because I did not receive an invitation to the wedding in Madison Square Garden in New York City, and I'm really hurt about that. But I hope you're safe and cool and happy today. Thank you for tuning in to Sunday in the House for our weekly red letter lesson on the words and deeds of Jesus Christ the Lord. I have a surprise for you today, introducing you to the 4 versions of that red letter Jesus, and I don't mean Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I'll get back to that. Stay with me. We're going to go in a fresh and interesting direction today. But before we delve into the Bible, let me acknowledge the significance of today, this weekend. First, it marks 18 months since I launched this broadcast for many of my friends who are no longer involved in church. They're part of that de-churched population in the United States. That may include you. If you used to be active in a congregation or a parish, but are no more, you've joined the legion of de-churched people in the United States, 40 million strong. And most of you are Christian, still thinking deeply about what you believe and what it means to be called Christian. You're a Jesus person, convinced that God sent Jesus as a teacher, a guide, a role model, but also as, to use his phrase, the Son of Man, and also Son of God, to use the phrase of many Christians. Jesus as the agent of God's work and way on earth in the world. You have embraced Jesus as the one who saw beyond this age into the age to come, beyond this world into the other world, beyond this experience of guilt and grace, right and wrong, sin and salvation, into that experience of being caught up in the very being of God. You might claim Jesus as the person who ran afoul of the religious and political leaders of his day. Jesus, who was arrested, tried, sentenced, and crucified as a threat to both the state and the temple, or I might say, both the empire and the temple. You confess Jesus as the one whom God raised from the dead early on the first day of the week, whom God anointed with all the power of the Holy Spirit, whom God commissioned to suffer the consequences of our sin, to lead us into the promises of his righteousness. This Jesus, who owns the future, who is the future, who leads us all into the future that is promised by God. This may be your confession of faith. It's mine. Let's think about it today. Thanks be to God for this broadcast. I'm glad to report that this past week we reached our highest audience. 123 people have watched some or all of the broadcast over the last week. That's not what we call viral. That's not even on the fringe of viral. But it's up significantly over the average of 75 that have tuned in over the first year and a half. Most people do not watch it live at 9 o'clock on Sunday, but sometime during the week, and that's probably you. And then people will watch it for weeks. I don't know what made last week such a great show. Maybe it was the marvelous voice of Dan Terhune singing last Sunday, singing my edited and expanded version of America the Beautiful. Thank you for your interest in it. So we begin today by recognizing the significance of this day, marking 18 months of broadcasting Sunday in the House. Thank you for your support. But of course, second, we note the significance of this day, this whole weekend, as the birthday of our country. Somebody sent me An image of the flag. One of our listeners out in Illinois sent this. We tinkered with it a little bit, but I like it. Shows the flag, of course, and all the fireworks. Maybe you stayed up last night and watched the fireworks. We were watching New York on ABC because they had the parade of tall ships. New York was the place to be this weekend. New York's been the place to be all year. An amazing place and a wonderful place to visit. We love our country, as people everywhere love their country. We love our communities, our families, our heritage, our successes, our promise of good things to come. God bless America, we think and say and hope. But at the same time, we're embarrassed by so much of our national family. We have a history of violence and subjugation. We have an unjustified presumption that we are the greatest, the best, the most holy among all the countries and peoples of the world. I'm embarrassed, and maybe you are embarrassed by things today, especially the corruption, the cruelty, and greed that has disrupted so much of our national spirit. And then there is the rejection of things that we think constitute part of our greatness. Due process under law, a warm welcome to immigrants and refugees, the separation of church and state. All of these have been compromised, and this bothers me. It drives me to prayer and to protest. I've talked about both of these. And of course, these kinds of things challenge our confidence in our great nation. Maybe you feel this way. Maybe I speak for you. But I want you to know that I'm thankful and hopeful this weekend as an American, and I want to mention some of the things that make me glad, that help me celebrate, that give me hope. Maybe you feel this way. I want to start with the beauty of our country and that great network of local, state, and national parks. I hope you have a practice of visiting the parks whenever you can. I want to mention the music and the art and the dramatic productions from the art community that filling museums and theaters and halls of all kinds. This is such good stuff. We were witnesses to it all day yesterday, all over the country. I'm proud of the inventors, the creators, the entrepreneurs that lead the world in bringing amazing things into being. I love the athletes of our country that learn a sport in grade school, high school, college, and beyond, inspiring and entertaining us. Think about the World Cup, the Super Bowl, the Olympics, the World Series. It's all great stuff and good for our spirit. I want to give a shout out to soldiers and sailors, Air Force personnel, and all of them in shape, in place, in step, in time to meet every threat, to represent us well, to come to the aid of every ally. I want to mention our neighbors. All of us have neighbors next door and down the street, in the next housing development, people who build homes and beautify streets, pick up after tornadoes and floods, and occasionally bring us a casserole or invite us to an open house. Yesterday, I walked next door and met the father of our neighbor. The father's name is Mike. He's visiting from Cleveland with his wife, Ann. He'll be our neighbor for the next few weeks while his daughter and family are on the road, traveling to the great scenes and parks out west. Mike and I talked about our great country, where we've been and what it was like and where we would like to go. I told him this story. On Thanksgiving Day 2006, my wife and I were on a 13-week cross-the-country trip, and on that particular day, we were at the Grand Canyon. We had never been. I called ahead to make reservations for the Thanksgiving meal. The hostess who answered the phone said, Well, you must call the barn. Well, I was puzzled, but I did as she directed. I called the barn, wanting to reserve my meal. But the attendant there, also confused by my southern accent, asked me, "This is the barn. Do you want a meal, or are you asking for a mule?" He switched me back to the dining hall. I was more careful with my pronunciation. Maybe you've been to the Grand Canyon. It's a great place. Wherever you are today, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Texas, Florida, Georgia, Maryland, Minnesota, California. I call off these states because many of our listeners live in these places, plus Tennessee and Kentucky, Indiana, North and South Carolina, Georgia, Mississippi, Virginia. Wherever you are today, God bless our great country. God help our country to live up to our ideals, to be the country that we want it to be. May God strengthen us to push back against self-interest and dedicate us to the common good, what the Constitution calls a more perfect union, which is what we all need, a place of justice, freedom, opportunity, and a good future for our children and grandchildren unto the third and fourth generations, to quote the Bible. That's my prayer today. I hope you pray some version of that prayer often, today and many days. This is what we vote for and work for and join together for in this great task of building our place, blessed by justice, mercy, and humility. God bless America in these ways. God bless America, especially if we embrace Christian values and practices. You know, there's a great deal of talk today of what it means to be a Christian nation. For some, it means limiting entry and citizenship to those from a Christian culture. That's taken root recently, as you know. For some, it means public symbols and visible signs of Christian presence, like the cross, cathedrals, Bible verses in classrooms, baptized people in charge of everything and anything. People who think this way want to give preference to the Christian religion and Christian organizations and Christian practices, well, like Easter and Christmas. For many people who have this understanding of what it means to be a Christian nation, they want to make it easy for Christian organizations to get what they want, make it hard for other religions to get what they want, like building permits for sanctuaries or IRS tax exemptions or seminaries to train leaders. It means to them the freedom to preach the salvation of Christians and the damnation of everybody else. Many people who think like this are called Christian nationalists, Christian dominionist. A bunch of them put on uniforms and masks, carried flags, and marched in New York City yesterday. You've seen that. Afraid to show their faces. And I wonder, what do they want? Who are these people? But many of us have other standards for being a Christian people, and it begins in the life and ministry and teaching of Jesus. A Christian nation embraces the attitudes and behaviors of Jesus. It makes it the norm for all of us, both in our private life and also in our public policies. You know, Jesus was never concerned if and when and where people worshiped or gathered for religious things. It's hard to find anywhere in the teaching and words of Jesus where he was concerned about what you do on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. I remember when we lived in Jerusalem, it was always easy to tell the religion of the merchants in the old city of Jerusalem. On Friday, all the Muslim shops were closed. On Saturday, all the Jewish shops were closed. On Sunday, the Christian shops were closed. I kind of like that. You know, Jesus was concerned that hungry people were fed, that poor people were clothed and housed, that strangers were received and welcomed and cared for. Jesus was committed to speaking the truth and practicing mercy for everybody. Jesus practiced this, treating every single person with the dignity that comes from being a child of God. This is true religion, true spirituality, true Christianity. Which is why here in the house, week by week, we give our attention to this Jesus, what I and others call the red letter Jesus. For 18 months, I've been reading for you and discussing with you the ways and means of this red letter Jesus. Now, I know there's a lot of other good stuff in the Bible. There's also a lot of bad stuff, a lot of stuff we ignore, a lot of stuff we don't practice, a lot of stuff we reject. And by we, I mean everybody. But there's still a lot of good stuff in the Bible. There's a lot of great poetry and prayers and the prophetic teaching of the great Hebrew prophets, the writings of the Apostle Paul. I've given my life to reading and writing and teaching all of this. But we're focused here on Jesus. This is a Jesus-centered ministry, a Jesus-focused broadcast, a Jesus-only way. Jesus is the way, our truth, our life. We try to cultivate all of that here in the house, as we call it, the meeting house, Sunday by Sunday. I hope you get something out of it. I hope it inspires you and teaches you, motivates you, corrects you, just like it does me. I hope it builds in you an aspiration to follow Jesus more closely, like the old song says. But today I want to introduce you to something that I have not mentioned in the 18 months of our study of the red letter Jesus. I want to say that there are 4 pictures of Jesus in the Christian writings of the New Testament, not just one. 4 testimonies, 4 sides of Jesus, 4 expressions of Jesus. And again, I don't mean Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. That's very common. But I've not said much or written so much about these 4 testimonies to the red letter Jesus. I've not hidden it from you. But as I unpack this today, you'll see that much of this you already know. So let me unpack it this way. Let me say that I find in the New Testament, not just in the Gospels, but in the red letters, I find 4 sides of Jesus. I've given them a name. Easy to remember. Let's see if you remember. Maybe I'll give a quiz at the end of this session in about 10 minutes. First, there's ministry Jesus. Ministry Jesus. Matthew, Mark, and Luke highlight this ministry of Jesus. He went around doing good. He helped people. He received people. He blessed people. He spoke to people. He was kind to people. He healed them. And then there is mystical Jesus. Primarily in the Gospel of John. All the red letters in the Gospel of John give us a substantially different picture of Jesus. The one who was centered in the life of God, the one who considered himself one with God. You've seen me, you have seen God the Father, this mystical Jesus said. And there are long prayers and in the Gospel of John, where Jesus speaks into and describes this close relationship with God our Father. So that's mystical Jesus. Third, there is missionary Jesus. This is the one that we encounter in the Acts of the Apostles and in the letters of Paul the Apostle. Some of you didn't even know that there are red letters, the words of Jesus, in Acts of the Apostles and in the letters of Paul the Apostle. They're very limited. I'll get to that in just a minute. But these red letters represent the witnessing Jesus, the missionary Jesus, the evangelistic Jesus, the Jesus who is moving into all the world to tell this story and motivating us to do the same. And finally, in the book of Revelation, there are a lot of red letters in the book of Revelation. We haven't touched on that at all. We run into what I call the mighty Jesus, the resurrected Jesus, the kingly Jesus, the one who has power and is coming in glory. Ministry Jesus, mystical Jesus, missionary Jesus, mighty Jesus. Can you remember that? Can you make a note of that? Write it down, put it in your head. You might have occasion to talk to somebody about this. Let me go a little deeper on this. Let me give you some examples. Ministry Jesus said things like, "Come unto me, all you are weary and heavy laden, I will give you some rest." Ministry Jesus told us to feed the poor, clothe the naked, pass out cups of cold water, visit those who are in prison. That's ministry Jesus. Mystical Jesus said, "If you've seen me, you've seen the Father, God the Father." Mystical Jesus says, "I and the Father are one." Mystical Jesus said, "The Father has sent me." And then there's missionary Jesus. Missionary Jesus gets a lot of time and play in American Christianity. Missionary Jesus says, "Go be my witnesses. Go tell your story. Go tell my story. Go into all the world. Baptize people and teach them." That's missionary Jesus. When Paul the Apostle was discouraged and was not making any progress, and this missionary Jesus came to him in a vision and said, "Be encouraged. I've got many people around you. You don't know them yet, but be encouraged. Keep going forward. Keep telling your story." And then mighty Jesus. He'll say things like, "Sit with me on my throne," or "I am coming soon. I'm coming in power." Mighty Jesus will say, "Don't forget these words I'm telling you. These prophecies are true. You pay attention." Well, let's go back through those four again and talk about what actions did they take. Ministry Jesus, he fed people. Mystical Jesus, he prayed for people and with people, interceded for people. Missionary Jesus appeared to Paul, directed Paul, encouraged Paul and all the missionaries. Mighty Jesus rebuked the seven churches of Asia Minor according to the book of Revelation. He predicted judgment. He warned them. Now, as you can see, these four versions of Jesus are not new to you. You have been taught all this. You've heard it. You've heard sermons and lessons, and some of it going all the way back to vacation Bible schools. All of them are part of our red letter Jesus. They represent the full counsel of God, to use a biblical phrase, a well-rounded portrait of Jesus, the total story of the gospel. How do these four presentations of Jesus impact us? We imitate ministry Jesus. We love and trust mystical Jesus. We obey missionary Jesus. And I want to say, yes, we fear the mighty Jesus. We fall at his feet and worship the mighty Jesus. All of these are part of the red letter Jesus. I did something this week. This is not real scholarly. I did not learn this in seminary. But you know, I use my red letter Bible. And if we go through the New Testament and organize them by how many red letter words are recorded in the New Testament, my rough estimate, is that there are 80 solid pages of red letters of Jesus. 80 pages scattered through the whole New Testament. Now, follow me closely here. You know, I did this once before with questions in the Bible. Counted all the questions, 2,550, give or take a few. 80 pages of red letters of Jesus. That is, if we were to consolidate all the red letter words, they would occupy about 80 pages. Of those 80, 58 pages are ministry Jesus. 16 pages are mystical Jesus. 2 pages are missionary Jesus. And 5 pages are mighty Jesus. Take a look at a page out of my Bible. This is the book of Revelation. You see, it has 3 red letter passages. But if you take all those and combine them, maybe a quarter to half a page. But when you do this and analyze this in this way, 72% of this material is ministry Jesus, 20% mystical, 3% missionary, 5% mighty Jesus. This gives you a sense of proportion or of emphasis. Or can I put it this way? Red letter Jesus is 72%, give them something to eat. 20% loving and trusting God. 3% telling your story or Jesus' story. 5% fearing God. I don't know whether that makes a lot of sense, or it's certainly not a scholarly way to look at things, but it may give us a sense of proportion. You probably can name people in your life who exemplify each of these ways of being a Christ-like person. How would somebody describe you? Like ministry Jesus? Like mystical Jesus? Like missionary Jesus? Like mighty Jesus? What part of Jesus comes easiest to you, is most comfortable to you, shapes your own religious and spiritual identity? Are you mostly ministry Jesus or mystical Jesus or missionary Jesus or mighty Jesus? And then this question, which of these do you need right now? Think about the people around you. What Jesus do they need? This foresighted Jesus of the New Testament is able to save and keep and lift and bless all of us. All 4 ways of seeing and receiving Jesus are transformational. All 4 can bless you and fill your life with something that God offers every person. So I'm going to be, over the next few weeks, talking about this. And I hope this broadens your welcome of Jesus into your own life. I hope it helps you understand what Jesus can be for you. I hope it deepens your love for God. Thank you for watching and listening today. I'm broadcasting July the 5th. You can access any of these programs, now more than 80 of them, on my YouTube channel. Visit the website at themeetinghouse.net. Subscribe to my weekly newsletter. I wrote this week on religious freedom and religious persecution. I think it's worth reading. But if you're already overwhelmed by everything, there's so much out there. Sometimes it's like drinking from a water hose or a fire hydrant. Too much, too fast, overwhelming. But thank you for joining with me today. Hope it makes your day good. Thank you for your comments, your communication with me. Thank you for your contributions. We need them. It's all good. I love hosting this broadcast. It means a lot to me. I find great fulfillment in it. I thank you for your comments, for writing me and encouraging me. I hope this is a blessing to you. I want to close out now with this image from last night in New York City. The place to be, the tall ships, the crowds, the performers, and Miss Liberty. God bless America, and God bless all of us.